Yeah, so firstly, Happy New Year to everyone who is joining us from across the country. Absolute pleasure, in fact, to have all of you with us this evening. Uh, I know it is still a lot of places in the north is still holiday time. People are really resuming back to their schools. At least I got a flavor of it early this morning. My wife, for the first time, went to school with a lot of hue and cry. There is so much of cold in the north, and why her school is opening. But having said this, I know in the south, I believe the schools have already reopened, and in the north, more importantly, I think around 15th of January is when the schools will reopen. So, given that you still took out time, that's what I was trying to arrive at. Thank you very much. I have a very special guest. Many of you already know Mrs. Seetha Murty, but what I'll do is I'll quickly give a very brief introduction on her body of work, followed by what the format of this discussion would look like, which is that we'll listen in from Mrs. Rita Murthy, initial half of the discussion, which is, I think, 20 to 25 odd minutes or whatever time she feels convenient for her to take up her priorities, if I may say. It may not be all 10, it can be 10, or it can be less than 10, right? So once that is in place, we'll invest majority of our time actually in asking each one of you to have a very healthy conversation in terms of either chipping in with your points on what are your top 10 priorities for this year as a school leader, right? Because you'll understand this as the format of our series are. We will be only inviting 5 leaders in the next 1 month or so on IPN, but it doesn't mean that we will not really include your view. In fact, before all of you had joined in, I had also highlighted the importance of why each one of you is requested to fill in this form, which we have sent in to you, which is a Google form, which is a form actually which asks you to give your top 10 priorities as a leader, right? And once you have given those top 10 priorities, and we have concluded with these discussions of ours, which is on the 31st of January, our final discussion will happen. We will at IPN arrive at the top 10 priorities, which will be the representative top 10 priorities of everyone who has given those priorities to us, right? So, with which, what will happen is that you will actually have a fairly exhaustive a list, or I would say, which will be a true representation of how the mood or how the leaders of at least IPN forums are thinking about, right? For all of you who are joining us for the first time, just to give you a little sense, IPN to me, when we have been building this for the past 9 years, right? So IPN is a very bottom-up network. We take pride in saying that. Why? Because I truly believe India is beyond the metros of our country. India lives beyond what I say the 4 or 5 metros in our country. But having said this, the advantage there is that you get a true flavor of how everybody is thinking from a metro to a small city to a tier 3 or a tier 4 town of our country. Right. On that note, we will have this season, as in this edition of IPN Top 10 Priorities, we will have 5 leaders who will be sharing their top views. In fact, we are starting this conversation with our guest, who is our first speaker for this series. This year is Mrs. Seetha Murty, and I will, as I said, for all of you or majority of you, you already know her. She's based in the southern part of our country, but more than that, she's been a very distinguished leader, and I have a brief introduction of hers, and I would love to share that with all of you so that you connect with her better as she deliberates with all of us. Right, Mrs. Seetha Murty at present is the Director of Education at the SilverOaks International Schools in southern part of the country. They are based in Hyderabad, Vishakhapatnam, and few other centers. Mrs. Seetha Murty has 3 decades of teaching experience in different geographies of India, making her a lifelong learner. As an IB educator and founding president of Association for Heads of IB World Schools in India, she blends national and international goals of education in all her endeavors within and outside India. Research, curriculum development, teacher training are some of her strengths. She started a research center within the school to develop curriculum based on cognitive learning. She has developed and published student-centric books in science, maths, and English for students up to grade 8. And these are used within the 4 campuses she heads. Inspired by Gandhian mantra Sarvodaya, she drives a civic and social responsibility program at the SilverOaks called Me and My Country, We Grow Together. Uh, Among many other things, she's been a speaker at 3 TEDx events at IIT Delhi, RIE Mysore, CIA Education Summit, and she's very, very reputed speaker at various forums across the country. One final thing which I think is for me stands out in her profile as well is that she also identified as one of the top 5 leaders in the Lead India contest held by Times of India, Hyderabad in October 7, which is 2007. She believes that Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People make her lead herself. She was in the June 2024 awarded honorary doctorate for her contribution towards teacher training for teacher trainees at the Linköping University, Sweden. Right? With that, I welcome Mrs. Seetha Murty to this discussion. Lovely to have you with us, and we're looking forward to a very healthy conversation, ma'am. Over to
Thank
you.
you, Gaurav. Thank you very much for having me on your talk show because it's 2020 February that I met you for the first time. And 2025 January, I'm starting again with you, a public event, which makes me feel very good because what I appreciate about your work, Gaurav, is that you are connecting everybody across the geography of India, okay? Different cities, not tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. And when I've attended 1 or 2 events of yours, it's so heartwarming to see so many educators coming together to understand, learn, collaborate, okay? So that makes me feel very good about the work you're doing, Gaurav. So keep going and God bless. And to all the educators who joined this Tuesday evening, that in itself speaks about how committed you are to what you're doing and how you want to explore new horizons about the work. Thank you so much. It is really heartwarming to see that on a Tuesday evening, we have more than 130 people gathered here to hear me. And I feel all the more responsible that what I say should be meaningful to each one of you. Okay. Having said all that, Gaurav read out my profile. Actually, I should say it is a little uncomfortable when you're there and somebody's reading about you. You don't know what you do, what to do, what expressions to give. Thank God this is online. When this happens physically, face to face, I keep wondering what are we supposed to do when people are introducing you? And oftentimes I've told people that I'll introduce myself. I'm perfectly all right with that because I think based on the audience we are talking to, we need to tell them about the work that we do, how is it relatable to them. So let me give a little context about the kind of work that I'm doing. I started my career way back in late 80s as a pre-primary teacher. I moved in different parts of the country, worked in Delhi, worked in Gwalior, worked in Shillong, across different geographies of India, and finally settled in Hyderabad. I've been with SilverOaks for the last 20 years. Okay, this is my 20th year. It feels very good that when I joined the school way back in 2005, we were one campus in Hyderabad. And it gives me immense satisfaction looking back that one campus has become 5 campuses now, about 7,000 students in all our campuses. That one campus, when I had taken over, it was still a state board school in the then Andhra Pradesh. Now it's Telangana, of course. Okay. From there, our journey to international baccalaureate program, CBSE program, and today, 17 years of IB that we implement in our school makes me feel to proudly proclaim we are an international school for the students of India, not to send them or export them abroad, but to help them develop a certain learner profile, a character, and competence. Okay. I still remember when we had our first IB visit in 2006-7. the visit team asked us, why are you going for an international program? You're a national school. You have children from the local communities here. Why are you going for IB program? So the first thing that I told them is, according to IB, international mindedness is all about respecting diversity, respecting cultures, and ensuring that nobody feels left out, nobody feels alienated, or nobody feels isolated. Where better than India that you need international mindedness? So many states, so many languages, so many cultures, so many climates. While Gaurav is sitting in foggy Delhi right now with probably 3 degrees or 4 degrees temperature, I'm sitting in Hyderabad with about 22, 23 degrees here, conveniently dressed, like he said. Okay. But loving the idea of wearing the woolens and, looking for opportunities to go abroad, to go up north. But what is more important for children in a school to learn is respecting this beauty of diversity in our country. Okay, the food habit, the same chicken is made in multiple ways across the country. Same potato acquires so much of, so many different forms that sometimes you don't recognize the potato, okay, or the bindi. So this is what I told my the visit team at that time. For me to have an international program, I don't have to have children from globetrotting community. I need to have my children learn the life's lessons of respecting others, their culture, their language, their eating habits. From there, our journey started. Each time I would dig out the layer of an international program. I would look at its relevance and significance more for our children in India, in our Indian schools, than anywhere else in the world. Okay. So that's the context I come from. Having dug these layers of international program, finding the relevance and significance to the students who come from within Hyderabad, within Bangalore, within Visakhapatnam, how do I make sure that I align the national education goals and the international framework and make sure that all the teachers who are the actual executors, I may be sitting loftily inside my office with high goals that we should do this, we should do that, but how will my teachers deliver it if they don't get on board with me or with the program or with the belief system? Okay. I burned midnight oil and I love burning it actually. I make sure that others also burn it. Okay. Because when you want great things to happen, you can't make it happen between the school timing. You need to work hard. You need to make sure that there is a paradigm shift happening in everybody's mind, because with each generation, teaching is getting a new connotation, learning is getting a new interpretation. And with AI and Chat GPT, let us all be prepared that within a few years, we may either become dinosaurs or we may become relevant with the way we equip ourselves. So that's my context. I love experimenting. I love creating. I love making sure that every student takes away something from each school day. So, all these 20 years, like Gaurav already said, I think in one area, my major contribution has been developing content which is highly interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, yet aligning with the national curriculum framework. Okay, so that has been my major achievement in terms of running these schools, having my students even in grade 2 exploring what is calculus, or even in sixth grade exploring what is thermodynamics. Okay, but all these don't happen just like that. I think these things happen because when you have your team with you, when they believe in you, when they believe that the commitment that you have is not for a personal gain, but for the larger good of the students who come into our schools. That's my context. Now, last year too, or year before this, if I remember well, Gaurav, I think it's year before this that we had a similar conversation about top 10 priorities. When I looked at top 10, I thought it could be pretty boring. I did the same thing the first time when you asked me to. But even now, I think I only have top 5 that I'd like to share. Okay. So what are the top 5 priorities of me in my role as the Director of Education of SilverOaks International Schools, where 7,000 students are there, more than 500 teachers are there, where we have the IB, the International Baccalaureate Program, we have the CBSE in some of the senior classes in our campuses. How do I drive this new session? Just the other day, I was drafting the newsletter to the parent community. In schools, we have two calendars. The life cycle of schools is between the January-December calendar and the academic calendar, March to April, March to April. Okay. The life cycle between these two is very interesting. It never lets you sleep or even, rest, actually speaking, because it's a constant action of what next, what next. Just when you think everything is in place, something else has to come up. Okay. But that's the beauty of being in schools, action at all times. So having started 2025, and a week now since we started, I'm already in that brainstorming mode with my team as to what should be the top priorities in our school, okay, in our schools. But then if I share those top priorities, it would look like I'm talking about what is the work I'm doing in my school. So I went a little broader from there, and I thought I should share the priorities of a leader of a school, which could be relevant to anybody everywhere in any geography that you're joining from. Okay. So my first and foremost important thing, grooming instructional leaders, pedagogical leaders, and subject leaders. Okay. Why do I say this? I see a great dearth of instructional leadership in the country right now. I see a great dearth of pedagogical leadership in a school. Okay. And I see a great dearth of course, no, I would say there are HODs in many schools, head of the department of a different subject. But what we need to look at is, are these HODs subject leaders? Are these HODs able to actually unfold the depths of a subject in the classroom, make it transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary, make it project-based, make it relevant, contemporary, and futuristic? Or are they just looking at a process or a timetable or targets of, by this month end, these many lessons have to be completed? So for me, subject leaders are not HODs. Subject leaders are people who bring the latest information into that subject, whether it may be social studies or sciences or mathematics. How do they bring the current and the futuristic events or discoveries or inventions into that subject? So, and when I'm talking about instructional leadership, designing an instructional environment in the school is a big challenge, especially if you're running a K-12 school, kindergarten to grade 12. Designing instruction at a kindergarten level, primary level, middle school level, senior and senior secondary level, which is vertically aligned. Because alignment should not come because you have NCERT textbooks from grade 1 to 12. It should come because you have consciously developed what kind of instructional approach we will have for each of these subjects. How scientific is it going to be? Is it going to be process-oriented or people-oriented? Will it be opening new vistas, new windows to the world to our students? These are the questions that we'll have to ask ourselves. For me, instructional leadership is, how does the school pedagogical leadership plan that here are the set of teachers who are teaching grade 1 and 2 or 5 and 6 or 7 and 8? How will they understand the changing scenarios for the generation? What is their current level of understanding? How do we hook them to the learning and excite them? So there are 4 words that I constantly use: relevant, significant, engaging, challenging. If what we are teaching in the classroom is not relevant, engaging, significant, challenging, you lost the students. You lost their attention completely. So instructional leadership is very systematically and scientifically and proactively planning how will this topic called trigonometry, or how will this topic called polynomials or magnetism here or democracy there, how will it be taught? How will it be learned? What is the evidence we have that they've learned it? Okay. Is a question answer paper the only evidence, or are there other modes where we can discover that there is learning? So instructional leadership is that. Then comes a pedagogical leadership. What is pedagogically? Pedagogy, if you look into the dictionary, it says the science of teaching, not the science of learning, science of teaching. Okay. The science of teaching is so vast. I remember in 2005 when children joined in pre-primary, that is LKG or pre-primary 1, as whatever you may call it, children needed to be taught slanting lines and curves and things like that to start the alphabet. Okay. Now we don't do that. In 2024, children already come with the control over their pencil, okay, and control over their movements, directions of the hand and things like that. So you cannot do what you're doing in 2005. You have to upgrade the pedagogy, how you teach. Okay. So pedagogical leadership, if you, within your schools, you have a few people who are not managers of timetables and managers of people, but pedagogical leaders who will plan the way we teach, the way we test, the way everything is a beautiful plan according to the generation that we are teaching, age group that we are teaching, and the subject. So that's pedagogical leadership. Then the subject leadership. It's so easy to use that outdated textbook in our 10th grade and 9th grade. So easy to just depend on a textbook and go from unit 1 to unit 2 to unit 3. But imagine that is only a small part of everything else that you're teaching. So begin with an end in mind. What do I want through this democracy or through this socialism lesson? What do I want my students to learn? Okay. And you can be the author of the curriculum. That subject leader can actually bring, I would like to teach all the revolutions around it before they understand why there is a change at all times. Okay. So pedagogical leadership. So my top priority, because I see wherever I go to, whichever school I go to in India or outside India, what we greatly miss is instructional leadership, pedagogical leadership, and subject leadership. And there is no, I think, no substitute to having great instructional leaders in your school, because a school thrives on instruction. School thrives on pedagogy and subjects. Okay. So that's my top priority 1. Now I'll come to top priority 2. Or maybe before I go to that, I need to give you examples. Within my schools, we have homegrown leadership model. Okay. This is something we learned way back in 2005. Toyota, the cars that we drive, Toyota company, I believe has this model where their experienced and competent workers become their supervisors or, mentors or project heads or whatever, depending on the ranks that they have. It's a beautiful model because when people who are working within the company know everything about the company and they're competent enough, it is not fair on the part of the company to bring somebody from outside and say, from today, he's your boss. Okay. Many schools do that. Many schools do this thing of that you have a fantastic teacher, but suddenly you bring somebody else saying that here is your vice principal, your headmistress, your subject head, your HOD. Okay. Because the school has something called a character, the school's character, the school's philosophy, the school's USP, that will be known only by the person who's working in the school for a considerable time. You neglected or ignored that competence that is there with you, and you brought somebody, a rank outsider, who would suddenly want to change everything that's being successfully done. Okay, I think we're being unfair, as all of us, I'm sure, would here in this meeting are leaders in some way or the other of schools. All of us have to think, are we grooming leaders? Are we grooming leaders to take on our roles after we retire or we move on. Because even if you're with a school for 2 or 3 or 4 years, I think it's our ethical responsibility to groom leadership and make sure that school, because that school may be owned by somebody who's not a very nice person. Okay. But the school has children who believe in you, who respect you. So it's our ethical responsibility to groom leaders, leave them behind when we are moving on, to make sure that the children don't get affected. So in our school, only teachers become coordinators, vice principals, principals. There, all of them know that we will not surprise them by bringing some outsider, and all of them feel that this is the way I should grow. So, and also I tell them that all growth is not about becoming a principal, because a typical principal's role is the most boring role. It's a managerial role, sitting in the office with the glasses on the nose and, being very bossy with people. I think it's such a cliched impression or image about a principal. All principals of IPN network, I think we need to change that paradigm completely. That preconceived notion that principals are all managers. No, principals have to be instructional leaders, pedagogical leaders. Okay, principals have to be the first learners in the school. I always challenge my grade 1 students or anybody who will learn more today, you or me. And by the end of the day, when they're going back, I ask them, tell me, what did you learn? And I tell them, what did I learn? Okay. So irrespective of what the management of the school is or people are like, we have a direct connect with the students. Let us do that role very well before we think of the negativities around it. So I'll go to the priority 2. I'm looking at the time. Okay. Priority 2 is, it's an interesting term that I've come up with recently. Promoting proactive pedagogy. The 3 Ps. Promoting proactive pedagogy. Okay. Now, what is proactive pedagogy? While one is pedagogical leadership, instructional leadership is at one level, there's something called proactive pedagogy. And I'll share with you one example that we recently experimented. So I have this art teacher who is very good with craft and art and things like that. And I have this counselor, a well-being counselor who joined me recently, graduated from NIMHANS and joined me recently. She's got bright ideas. He's got great skill in his. So I thought, what do? I made both of them sit with me and I said, okay, guys, art is a way to calm down. Craft is a way to calm down. Can you two put your heads together, your skills together, and create a boot camp? Okay, a boot camp. Boot camp is nothing but a focus session on a particular topic. Okay, can you create a boot camp? I'll give you 90 minutes time. I'll give you a bunch of ninth graders. Work with them. Okay, show me how these students feel good about it at the end of 90 minutes and how they can tell me that they found a way to calm down because of the session that you developed. Oh, you won't believe it. After that, when I spoke to a ninth grade boy who is generally reticent, generally not very forthcoming, okay, when I asked him, he said, ma'am, when I was drawing the rivers and I was trying to point out at which point of river, my ma'am asked me, which point of river of life you are in, I could able to see myself. What did I, wait, how far did I travel? Where did I come to? So art and counseling both have come handy to me in this boot camp called proactive pedagogy. I did a similar thing with career counseling classes. I did a similar thing with even math and science and many boot camps that we created. So I think my top priority in this year is coming out of the cells and bells. I heard this term being used by somebody in a conference recently. Gaurav, you'll remember. I think Prakash Nair was using this term. Okay, cells and bells. Cells are your classroom, like the prison cells, and the bells. So everything in the school, if it is centered around cells and bells, what is it that out of the box that we are doing? As a school, if we don't create that environment, how will children think out of the box? Because if we are just showing them the cells and bells approach, a formula, this is how a school runs, how will they think out of the box? So for me, promoting this proactive pedagogy, okay, I don't, and by the way, I'm not the kind to tell teachers that, okay, you do this. I'm the kind who work with them to make it happen. I don't, because I know one thing, that all of us who grew up in a system within India are not greatly creative because our system never encouraged that. But who stops us with the abundance of resources available now? Who stops us from reading them, making our own interpretations and creating them? So, developing boot camps around various things to promote proactive pedagogy, not reactive pedagogy. I'll tell you what is a reactive pedagogy also. Reactive pedagogy is, after a test you have seen 10 of them did not get most of that unit. Then you make them sit separately and teach them that unit once again. That's your reactive pedagogy. But there's something called proactive pedagogy. You can create new ways of learning, and you can create boot camps, workshops, training sessions. You may call it anything, irrespective. But your intention here is to make sure that the learning environment and the agenda of that is well defined, well achieved. So that's my priority 2. I'll go to the priority 3. For this, I have to show you a book. I hope you will be able to see it. The book is called Upstream. The author is Dan Heath. I bought it during the COVID year in a similar Zoom meeting with some international educators. Everybody was supposed to recommend one book that they read that year and talk about it. So one of our colleagues from some country recommended this book. I immediately ordered it on Amazon. I have been reading it since then. It's so interesting because what does it talk about? Upstream thinking is all about, I must tell you, it's about problem solving before the problems happen. Preventive work. Okay. It also talks about how people are problem blind. You know that there will be a problem, but you're blind to it. So this book makes you conscious about problem blindness. It also talks about how lack of ownership of something leads to disasters many times. The book starts with an example of upstream thinking. Example is, here are two men sitting on the riverside, and suddenly they see a child drowning because the river is flowing from a certain height and they're sitting at the bottom of it. Okay. So they're sitting on the river bank and they see a child drowning. So they both rush into the water, save the child. Then they see a second one. Then they see a third one and a fourth one. So one of them walks out of the river, walks up to from where the children are coming. He wants to go and fix the problem there, not save the child who is already drowning. Upstream thinking in a simple way is that this entire book talks about 3 barriers to upstream thinking, and it gives you 7 questions. I'll only read them. I won't elaborate them because I want you to read the book. Because that book it's not a simple read, by the way. You really have to read it upside down, talk about it with somebody, only then you get the hang of it. Okay. So 7 questions for upstream leaders. All of you listen to it carefully. How will you unite the right people? In your schools, how will you unite the right people? Will you go by a formula of she has 18 years, she has 12 years, 13 years, she should be made responsible for this event or that subject or exams? Or will you look at who has the competence, who has the skill to do this? And if you have a problem, who are the right people who should be united in the school to work on that problem? So, how will you unite the right people? That's the first question. Second question is, how will you change the system? There's so many systems that need to be changed in a school. Okay. I remember once I was reading an article by Professor David Perkins. He's a professor of education in Harvard University. In his article, he was talking about old bicycle syndrome. Old bicycle syndrome. What does he mean by that? Oftentimes in schools, we have practices because these practices have been coming from long time back. Okay. Just like You have a cycle in your garage. You don't want to throw it. You can't use it. You don't want to give it off to anybody, but you want to keep the cycle there in the garage. Some of your practices could be like that bicycle, old bicycle. Neither useful, nor you want to use it, but it has to be there. Something like homework, something like, there are some of the things that you really need to audit. So how will you change the system? Next question he's asking here is, where can you find a point of leverage? What would you like to leverage? Where is that point? Who are the people? How will you get early warning of a problem? Early warning of a problem. How will you get that? How will you know you're succeeding? By the way, in all your initiatives or your programs, how will you know you're succeeding? How will you avoid doing harm? Trust me, this author, the kind of case studies he collected to explain his point about how will you avoid doing harm? Okay. Mind-blowing examples and case studies is brought here. What research he has done. Then the next question is, who will pay for what does not happen? It's a very tricky question, very oxymoronic question, but very deeply loaded question. Who will pay for what does not happen? Okay. It would need a 2-hour session for us to mull over it, but I want you to buy the book and read it. Okay. Finally, he talks about why am I talking about this book? I think my third priority here is upstream thinking. This year, I want to do a lot of upstream thinking, not downstream thinking. Not, this is going wrong, so what should I do? That is going wrong. No, I need to work on forewarning a problem. I need to make sure that the problem does not happen at all. I need to make sure that there's more proactiveness to entire system within the school, but not a reactive approach to it. So my third priority is upstream thinking. So I hope you took a picture of this book because this guy interprets it beautifully. I don't know if you've read the book by Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers and Blink and other books like that. I enjoyed reading Outliers. In the similar style, Dan Heath also writes about this upstream thinking in this book. So some books, for me are like my cell phone. As much as I need the cell phone, I need the books. They're my go-to places for whenever my mind is blocked and whenever I feel that I'm overworked, I have to read something, then it opens new vistas to me. Okay. So now I'll talk about the fourth priority. Again, I'll show you a book. Sorry about that. I'm not the PowerPoint type. I usually avoid PowerPoints because I feel they're so mundane. Okay. And I hate PowerPoints with data and tables and statistics and graphs and all that. So I don't do PowerPoints. As much as possible, I avoid them. So my fourth priority, another book called Never Enough. If any of you have children who are between the age of 12 and 18, you should have this book. If you are running schools, which are high schools and senior secondary schools, you should read this book. Never Enough. The title suggests that the expectations we have from students, from children, anything they do, we only say never enough. We want more. We want more. We never say enough. I love what you have done. No. Why don't you do that? Why can't you learn this? Why can't you get more marks? That cliched dialogue for the last 20 years or 25 years. Okay. The other day with all due respects to Manmohan Singh ji who passed away, only when globalization happened, corporatization of education happened in India. Why? Because we needed many people to get employed in the IT sector or the corporates. And with that came this immense focus on engineering colleges and jobs. And from there came the downfall of education. From there came the education is replaced with the word called coaching. Okay. Sometimes I think, Manmohan ji, have you done the right thing? But he has done the right thing. Our economy is booming and we are wonderful. But when you do something, there are implications in many other areas. education has taken a bad hit because the quality of education has been turned into something called coaching everywhere, from quotas to you come to Hyderabad, I'll show you the coaching factories we have over here. And I went to Srinagar a few years back for an educational conference. I saw Narayana Chaitanya there and I was shocked. I said, what is happening to our country? But when I read this book, it is a worst syndrome in the United States, not just India. You should see how parents are changing their jobs and lifestyles and houses and finances to make sure that their son or their daughter gets into the right university. This book is so beautifully written by a mother, and she was a journalist, American journalist, and she did this research. She interviewed hundreds of people, and she had written so beautifully how parents get influenced by other parents. We keep thinking peer pressure is only for children. Nonsense. Parents have more peer pressure than children. Okay. So these parents, how do they always say never enough, never enough? And what happened to the children? Some case studies also she tracked. It actually opened my eyes to a lot more than what is happening within India. I think all of us in this meeting are highly responsible for bringing a transformation into that cliched, overhyped thing called competitive exams. Getting into IIT, NIT. There's nothing wrong in getting into IIT or NIT or NEET, but everything is wrong about the way we talk about it. Everything is wrong about the way we refer to it. Everything is wrong about how a school celebrates the top rankers. There was the British High Commissioner had once visited our school. He was asking, what do you celebrate the most in your school? Who do you celebrate the most? I'll ask the same question to all of you. Who do you celebrate the most? What do you celebrate the most? Is it always that trophy, that award, that prize, okay, or that score or grades or marks? Or do you have anything else to celebrate in your school? I think all of us, we're more than 200 people here. We have that power, we have that opportunity to bring a change. Instead of saying never enough, let's start saying, what else can they do? I think just that little paradigm, if it takes a shift, there is going to be a huge change in the way the children in our schools look at education. So we should stop saying never enough, and we should start saying, what else can we do? What other potential do we have? That's my fourth priority. And finally, the last one. Read. Okay. Read as much as you can, not WhatsApp forwards. No, I don't believe in WhatsApp forwards, but I'm sure all of you know that they are very politically driven or drafted by vested interest groups, shared on WhatsApp. So read books, and more than following the news channels, read newspapers. Because you know why? When you print something, you are bound by that. So print media is more legally and ethically responsible while they're writing about something than electronic media, because they can just say, we didn't say it, somebody said it. If you've noticed, they bring all kinds of loud mouths to share whatever because they don't have to take the responsibility. Okay, so read books. The current book that I'm reading, I have to share this. This is Age of Revolutions by Fareed Zakaria. Now, Fareed Zakaria is our own country cousin from Aurangabad, moved to US. He's a talk show host, a news anchor, editor on CNN. I love the way he interprets news or the way he brings things. While there is criticism on CNN, okay, but every news channel will have their own political affinities. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Farid Zakaria. He's also an author. This is a book that I happened to hear about from a YouTube conversation between Malcolm Gladwell and Farid Zakaria. Malcolm Gladwell himself is a celebrated author, okay? But he was interviewing Farid Zakaria about this book. I like to hear conversations from the author about why did he write a book or why did she write this book, and then usually get the book. So when I heard it, I'm also a student of history when I was in school and college. Okay. So I like the title Age of Revolutions, but it is nothing about revolutions historically, but revolutions that changed the world from 1600. Especially the last part, it talks about the current times that we are living in and how things are going to change. And nowhere we are talking about AI and chat GPT here. That is such much talked about topics. Okay. Why am I sharing this with you? When you read the head of a school, the principal or the teacher or the coordinator, when you read, you are that much more informed and accomplished. Because for me, I always say one thing, reading is the only treasure that accompanies its owner everywhere. And you, as a principals and or teaching leader, teacher leaders that you are, imagine the kind of books you read and the kind of information or stories you can bring into the classroom. It changes everything in your school environment. The culture to read is something that begins from the leader. For me, I mean, it has been a priority since my childhood. It will continue to be, but I think I will take it further as a priority that everybody in the school, to some extent or the other, they read because, and they should talk from what they read, not talk from what they hear. So these are the top 5 priorities that I thought which are universally useful, relevant to the people here. Within my school, I may have other priorities like student leadership, mental well-being. I also have parenting workshops that I'm, lining up this entire year. I also worked on, I have to share this with you. I noticed one thing after watching this movie, Oh My God 2. I realized that education for boys, there's a lot of education for girls about menstrual cycles, personal hygiene, maintaining physical boundaries, and all that. There is very little education for boys, very little education. I explored even in Delhi, is there a professional group that is training boys, adolescent boys, about their challenges of their growing years? I didn't find any. Then I worked with my psychology faculty. I made them develop a workshop, and I'm making sure that all the boys from grade 7 to 12 go through these workshops and are openly able to talk about the problems they go through during puberty. Because Indian fathers also don't talk so much about it with their sons. Mothers may feel hesitant about it. So these are the things that I'm doing in multiple ways. But the top 5 priorities that I shared with you are something I felt are universally probably relevant. So on that note, I think, Gaurav, I've shared my top five priorities.
Quite. I mean, so much to reflect on, but considering we have so much to discuss, I will really not elaborate any further because I have a lot to say, but really get into straight to your questions or your observation. Let's start with that. We'll, as I said, if you have anything to share, which is if you have a question for Mrs. Murthy, you can put up a virtual show of hand. We'll help you unmute, and then you can ask your question or an observation. My only request is we have closed the chat window. All what will happen is through this conversation, which is you're asking a direct question or an observation. And at the same time, I will also request to keep your context to be about this discussion only. Okay. Trilokji, good to see you. Happy New Year and your question.
Happy New Year. Namaskar. Seetha Murty, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good, Trilokji. Good seeing you here.
I'm so happy hearing you. I was through and through listening to you. That's such a wonderful thing. But I just had two things in my mind. One
Okay.
is homegrown leadership,
Yeah.
which is a wonderful concept, and secondly is you talked about the bicycle, which is
Yeah.
to be thrown. We are still attached to it. So
I
if we are
know.
getting a better version of a bicycle, can we not go in for homegrown leadership with exporting and taking people from outside also for the betterment of the system altogether? These two things came to my mind,
I
which were wonderful, but they can be complementing each other otherwise.
Probably. But I think both these I spoke in two different contexts.
Yeah.
Okay? Homegrown leadership is when you groom your own teachers to become instructional leaders, pedagogical leaders. In the promoting proactive pedagogy part of it, I said some of the practices that we have in a school system, if we really audit and reflect over them critically, you will think you're doing it because it's a process. Okay. It is there that I talked about the bicycle syndrome. All practices.
I'm connecting it with the bicycle syndrome with some old people who are in the
No,
system.
no, no, no,
They are
no.
becoming a
Never.
rogue with the school, and still we are continuing with them. That kind of a thing
No.
came in my mind. Yeah.
Oh, no, 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 never. People, no, I'm not talking about people in that context.
Sure. Thank you so much for the clarification.
Wonderful. So, yeah, that is the way we will do it. We'll help you, in fact, unmute and you can ask your question. Anyone of our leaders joining us. In fact, we have quite an audience today. I was not really anticipating this, but fantastic.
I know.
229.
So we should have more questions. The idea of saying was that you should have more questions, right? So please go ahead. If you have any question or an observation to share with us, please do so. We still have 10 minutes with Mrs. Murty. We will really make the productive use of this remaining 10 minutes. In the meantime, if you do not have a question, I will also recommend a book which actually Mrs. Murty gave it to me, and I really cherish that book. It must be very nearby to me, and I think it's a fabulous read. All of you should really buy it. It's called Do Not Sprint
Don't sprint the marathon.
a Marathon. Yes.
Yeah.
So I think it's again a fantastic book, a very sort of a thin read, a good read, but powerful read.
True.
So, and I think while I agree to all, I'm not a pedagogical leader for that matter, but at least the commonality between our discussion was the last point to me. And we have also observed this at IPN. I will bring this to everyone's notice, and I'm sure all of you will agree to it. Our teachers do not read enough. And I'm saying this in all humility, this is for all of us. I mean, we do not read enough. Let me rephrase it. We do not, as an audience, read enough for that matter. Right. So I think now we have a few questions. Smita Gandhi, please, if you can introduce yourself or come on the video and then ask your question, please.
Yes. I think I am not able to switch on the video because there is some
Please go
setting
ahead.
problem.
Please go
Yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
So I'll just take this opportunity to first of all thank you IPN for this wonderful session. Seetha Murty ma'am, I had an opportunity to meet you at ETST
Yeah,
there.
very much. Yes.
Yeah, and since then I have been awe of your practices, SilverOaks practices, because you had shared, and your leadership is really very inspiring. So when I had filled this form for IPN, the form had asked to fill up 10 priorities, and so I couldn't write 10 priorities, but I had written my priorities. I want to upscale the quality of my school, quality of the education I'm imparting in my school, how to create more leaders, how to inspire more people. But I think in the five priorities what you have mentioned today, you have covered everything very beautifully, because you cannot directly work on quality unless until you work on the things what you have mentioned. And the most inspiring one, and I would say something which has motivated me, is upstream thinking. As a leader, I think upstream thinking is required every day. At the start of the day, I think every day this 7 question needs to be asked in the morning, and every day need to be filled with this upstream thinking. So thank you for bringing this wonderful concept. I will definitely read this book. My question is that how to, because you have been since so many years as a leader, handling 7,000 students and a huge staff, humongous staff, it's really a huge task.
Yeah.
How to keep yourself calm and composed, because when you are too passionate about quality education, and I don't mean to say quality education that my children should score 90%, 100% marks. Even my children are, whatever they are doing, they should get the best of their capabilities. And when I am so passionate about the quality, I am hard on myself, and I am hard on my team also at times because of that.
Yeah.
How do I control that? How do I keep myself calm and composed and still get the best done from my team without hassling them?
Empathy. Have empathy. You know why I'm saying that? one thing all of us have to understand, that the education system through which we have gone through has not prepared us for what we are doing. Okay.
Yes.
Like they say that usually in the eastern part of the world where we all live in,
Mm.
creativity is not encouraged.
Right.
But you expect our teachers to be creative, innovative, do different things. How will they do it? You
Mm.
have to help them. So have empathy, recognize what they can do and cannot do, and always
Right.
do positive reinforcements. Teachers,
Right.
poor things, they have a family, they have children, they have in-laws at home. Largely, you are women. That's why I'm saying that. Okay,
Yeah. Right.
you need to be very supportive, understanding, and also help them become professionally competent. I think
Correct.
empathy is the key word here, nothing else.
Correct, ma'am. Yeah, I agree. I
And
agree.
work
Thank you.
with them. Please don't just give an order to someone saying that you do it. Work with.
Hmm.
If you want anything different, you have to show what is different.
Right. Correct. That's
I'll give,
wonderful.
I'll give an example. One of my teachers shared this with me many years ago. We have this handwriting practice. Every day, the children have to write good handwriting and
Hmm.
show it to the
Hmm.
teacher. This is for improving handwriting.
Right.
Most of the time, the teacher's comment is write neatly, write neatly. Okay.
Hmm.
One day
And when she has written,
that little fellow has written, I'm writing neatly only. What is neatness? Okay. Look at the frustration of the little child.
Absolutely.
What else is neatness? He doesn't know. You have to show him what it is. It is the same thing with your teachers. If you are expecting them to do different things, you have to show them the way. That's why you have to be an instructional leader, pedagogical leader. Don't be a manager of a school, be a leader of the school.
Yeah, never
I,
enough.
Seetha Murty ma'am, I remember once, my teacher was writing, uh, write in a good handwriting. And when I
Yeah.
was writing, teacher's handwriting was so pathetic. Which is write in a good, neat handwriting. And her handwriting was pathetic. So,
Okay,
we have to
so
lead by example at times. Yeah.
True.
we'll go to the next set of questions. Miss Ritu, if you still have that question, you can still ask. After that, I'll go to Mathuraji. I'll come to you after Ritu, Chitranshi. Yeah,
Chitranshi. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm very, very good evening, and I'm glad I'm part of this conversation. Truly wonderful to hear you out, ma'am. And especially when you mentioned that you have, started your journey as a pre-primary teacher. That makes it more special because I feel the change has to come, as you mentioned, upstream. Here we'll say downstream, right?
Yeah,
So we need to go to the roots in order to achieve the heights.
very true.
Right,
Yeah.
right, ma'am. So I had not a question, I would say. Here in this country, ma'am, this is a practical problem that teachers here are not by choice,
Yeah.
they are by chance.
Yeah.
So, of course, we cannot change that overnight, right? So, whatever you said, whatever five priorities you had, how do you instill that in your teachers? I would say very safely, like 70% of them are there by chance,
Yeah.
not by choice. So, how do we, actually make them do what we want, or rather align them with our thought processes?
It's a continuous process. It doesn't happen overnight. You need to work with them because, like I said earlier, you need to show them the way, otherwise they won't do it. Like you
Mhm.
said rightly, there's a research paper that shows that 75% of the teachers in private schools are women, and out of that 75%, 60% teaching is not their first choice of profession. They've come here because it's convenient for work-life balance. Okay. But my experience, I have to tell you, is that many teachers who join after having done jobs here and there, and then they've come to schools, they're far more better than those who have done their B.Eds conventionally and done something here. You see,
True.
teachers, government schools have done their B.Eds, but how motivated are they? But you can count them on your fingertips. Okay. But I think my experiences have been working with them relentlessly. And each time you find a teacher discovering a new way to do something in the class, that charges you up. So the only way for a school leader is to work with them, show them the way, read with them, read for them. Okay, create that proactive pedagogy, show that this can be done like that. So continuous work with them is the only way. Otherwise, it could be a little challenging.
Yeah, get your point. Thank you so much. And I would like to share one book from my side. This is Reimagining
Oh,
Education
yes,
System.
I know Vardhan Kabra is a good friend. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. This again was an eye-opener. And of course, John Holt writes well. So the Underachieving School is one of my favorites to go back to.
Oh,
Thank you so
I don't
much.
know about that book. Underachieving School, is
The
it?
Underachieving School,
Okay.
you should read probably all the titles by John Holt. That's
Okay.
J-O-H.
Just to give
H-O-L-T.
you all a context, Ritu is also an owner of a wonderful chain of schools in Kanpur. She's a very progressive
Oh,
leader, and
Wonderful.
yes,
Very nice to know
yeah,
that.
very well read. Thank you, Ritu, for your
thank you so
question.
much. Yeah,
And
pleasure.
Mathuraji, your question. Mathuraji, over to you.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. Good evening, and happy new year
Namaskar.
to everyone. Ritu ma'am, really thank you very much for starting wonderfully, and you have given really the way we should think. You have we can say that 2025 revolution you started. But
Thank
the point is, like Ritu ma'am has said that the teachers they right now 75% teachers they are not coming with the with passion.
you.
So now, and we have so many books to read. hmm? Now the big issue is there. Now teachers have got mobile.
Yeah.
You know, now what they say, sir, PDF is there. I'll read PDF.
Hmm.
I told them read NCRT book. Reference books are there. Even I told them to read such type of the books which can motivate them to do better in the classroom. But the point is, sir, can you provide me the PDF, sir? Then, madam, how to handle such type of the teacher when the teacher is reading with mobile? And what they say, I told them, don't use mobile in the classroom.
Hmm.
Sir, mobile is most important for me.
Hmm.
Without this mobile, I cannot teach. They don't remember the things. When I was teaching, I was taking only the duster and chalk piece,
Okay.
and we were doing all those things. But now these teachers they don't read the books, man. They
Hmm.
want only PDF. So how to handle such type of the teacher? And not only teachers, children also what they do, ma'am, please give me PDF. I'll read at home because this is the time, 21st century, modern time, mobile time, Android time.
Mathuraji, probably what I'd like to tell you is people don't do what you tell them to do.
Of course.
People do what you do. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So for me, this is how I could create a culture. I don't walk without a book in my hand. And I don't tell them read the book. I read with them.
No,
I
ma'am. Of
micro
course,
groups.
alone one person can start. But the point is, ma'am, so many people, they don't follow you.
We need to lead by example, actually,
Yeah.
what ma'am is saying.
No, correct. This is
Yeah.
absolutely good idea. But
Hmm.
it can motivate only 10% people, maximum 20% people, but 90% people, they won't follow you. So
Chaliye.
how to motivate those
Yeah,
90%?
you can give up like that, saying that they don't follow, but you can be an optimist by saying that I will find a way to help them be better professionals.
That's how, ma'am.
Yeah, just
Mathuraji is
need to be
also
optimistic about it.
Mathuraji is also a very passionate educator based in Kudalur, Tamil Nadu.
Oh,
Fantastic, good
really?
to have you.
Interesting.
And Mathuraji, I always say this, and I'm sorry I'm taking this liberty, Mrs. Murthy. I'm saying this. I always say this while you can keep trying. I mean, obviously, one should always try as a leader, but also don't try to solve all the problems of the world.
Yes. Exactly.
It's little challenging. It's a little overwhelming as well. Like Manasa Ganduri, your question, please. Go ahead. मथुरा जी, और
Yeah.
आपको मैं बुक भेज रहा हूँ अपस्ट्रीम वाली, मैं ऑर्डर करके आपको भेज रहा हूँ, ठीक है, पढ़िएगा.
Thank you so much.
Manasa Ganduri, your question, please. Manasa, if you still have that question, I could see your virtual show of hand.
Yes,
Please.
sir. For the last 1 year, we have observed this strange pattern, okay, in our school. When we try and talk to the teachers of what can be done in a better way, they just come and tell me that, okay, ma'am, if you're not liking our work, I will go, I will not come from tomorrow. If you don't like, then relieve us, pay us and relieve us.
Yeah.
So I'm puzzled. How can they take such an easy decision without even informing? And how come they're taking students' lives for granted?
Yeah.
They equally have children. Why don't they empathize in that manner? This is kind of repeating. I face this with more than 10 teachers in my school.
Yeah, I can imagine. You will always have those naysayers, they say, no, those cynics or pessimists. You will always have people like that. You need to, based on your school context, you need to assess how do you keep them, hold them if they're very important, or let them go if they're not very important.
While we are
Okay, but
completely out
ma'am,
of
again, it is
Sorry.
kind of, hunting for a new teacher again. And there is a learning gap, by the time we get a new teacher.
Yeah, I know.
No,
I
you're right.
understand. This challenge is there in many schools across the world, not just India. Okay. But I think what we are talking about is that there will be challenges. In spite of that, as school leaders, what will be our approach? What will be our priorities? How do we operate from that?
Yeah,
Manasa,
okay.
where were you from? If we can get to know you a little better.
I am from Hyderabad, sir.
Okay. Hyderabad.
Yeah.
Very nice. Which school and whatever. Example.
Tejasvi Vidyaranya,
Tejasvi
Hapsigoda.
Vidyanam. Okay, wonderful. Completely out of time, right? And I don't think we have any other question from here on. So I'm taking the call that right now we are about to close this session. If you at all have anything to ask, right, we possibly can take it offline also. I think Murty is available on LinkedIn. Please do reach out to her and connect with her on LinkedIn as well. She's fairly approachable. She's part of the IPN community. If you have any question in retrospect, obviously we can also shoot that to her, as in we'll send her an email, and if she can possibly reply back to you guys. Right. Okay. Abha, so I see your real hand, not the virtual hand. So, okay, since I saw it.
So it's better to, just grab the opportunity. Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
And thank you, Seetha ma'am. It's always a wonderful part on me. I mean, you really impress me a lot. Ma'am,
Thank you.
just one thing I would like to add on here. Like, Gaurav, I would like your help there. Because, ma'am, you are a wonderful reader. Like, you read a lot. So, since we all are in a group, ma'am, kindly suggest few books so that every time it's not possible for us to go for the books and all. But if somebody suggests and recommends, it'll be a wonderful thing and it'll be a wonderful gift to us also.
Sure. Maybe I'll use the IPN WhatsApp group and share
Yes, ma'am.
about one
Yes.
book and, what is it about, and we can
Yes.
start something like
Yes.
that.
Let's start with that book bank only. It'll be turning out into a book bank then. I mean, it's a good thing.
Yeah. Thanks for that good idea. I think we can create something out of IPN group, Gaurav,
Yes,
that
ma'am.
we have book reading groups here.
Yes,
Well
ma'am.
done.
Do that.
Absolutely. All
Yeah.
for it. Yeah. And having said this, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's fairly said that, right? May this year be all fruitful for all of you. You stay healthy. That's the more important part. And obviously, you and your loved ones flourish in this year. Thank you very much, Mrs. Murthy. It was absolutely a
My
pleasure
pleasure. Thank you very much.
listening into you. And I believe this is the feeling everybody holds with me, right? Which is that you really had a great sharing with respect to these 5 priorities of yours. Thank you very much. We see you on the 15th, which is our next session on the top 10 priorities for this year. Thank you very much. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. And I'm sorry for my bad throat.